So welcome everyone to the NCTS webinar on nonlinear dynamics. Today it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Roberto Barrio from the University of Zaragoza. And Roberto is an expert in several different areas of dynamical systems, especially he's specialized in applications like biological systems and especially medical sciences, if I understand correctly. And well, today he will tell us about his new results or his results from the past few years on the problem of spike addition in excitable systems. So Roberto, I'm really looking forward to listening to your talk. The stage is yours.
Okay, so first of all, I want to thank the organizers for their kind invitation to give this talk. Okay, so I'm going to speak. Okay, you can see the screen. It's okay?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
so today I'm going to speak of several phenomena related with the spike adding phenomena. That means I focus on some excitable systems, some excitable cells. Mainly, I will work with some neuron models, but in some sense, it doesn't matter. It's some examples of excitable cells with fast slow dynamics. That is the key point in several points. So that's some models where study this phenomena. Okay, so first of all, I just want to introduce the people of my team. So we are a group in the University of Zaragoza in Spain. It's a Cody group. So we have a web page, but now it's down, so we have to reconstruct it. Also, we collaborate with people from Oviedo in Spain, from people in cardiac dynamics, for instance, Esther Puello, people in Japan recently about something related with cardiac dynamics. As I'm going to speak something about that, I put their names. Okay, so I'm going to begin. The motivation of my talk is, in this case, is two problems. But so it's something related with neuron dynamics, something with cardiac dynamics. But I will speak mainly about dynamics. So it's not just at the end I will speak of this problem. So for instance, we have this. Well, we have. Okay. Well, we have this system. In this case, we have the movement of a beetle. Okay, so this one pattern of movement. So we can see this is what is called a tripod gait. So always three legs on the floor. But there are other kind of patterns. So the question is that mathematics can answer the change of the pattern of movement of the different insects. So the question is to study which points are relevant on this case. Or another, probably no, of course, more interesting is the question about what happens with the heart. This is the normal beat. So in this case, okay, this is what we expect. But sometimes happens that we have, well, normally we don't have ventricular fibrillation because this is extremely dangerous. So in this case, very fast movement in the heart without going down to what is called repolarization. So later we'll enter here. So all these phenomena can be connected. So that's what we want to speak a little bit. Okay, so come back to our slides. So also our main motivation today, also we want to study brain dynamics. So in this case, we want to study big networks of neurons. So, but for today, we focus on spike adding. Just take a simplified model. So we take one isolated neuron. So in this case, we have this situation. So what we want to study is, okay, what changes we can expect in this excitable cell. Okay, so which model? So we can begin with the seminal work of Huthrin-Huxley about modelization of the activity in neurons, the electric activity in neurons. So they obtained the Nobel Prize in 1963 for that. So, but this model is not too complicated, but it's complicated enough to make almost impossible analytics and very difficult numerics. So other mathematical models simplify this model, Figno Nabumo, Maurice Lecard. In our case, we were mainly in Hilbert-Ross, but in some sense it doesn't matter to take one to another. But the good thing of Hilbert-Ross that is a polynomial system, it's a three-dimensional one, and it reproduces most of the dynamics of any kind of neuron, changing the parameters of the system. In this case, X will be equivalent to the membrane potential. So in this case, is the main variable in this case. The other are related with the gates of the different ionic gates of the cell. Okay, so but in this case, we have just this three-dimensional system. We have a slow parameter, epsilon, a small parameter, epsilon. So we have a typical fast slow system. So in this case, a key point is that the situation in this case is like this. So in this case, it's a low fast system. It's written in the fast time formulation. That is, we have, in this case, we have explicit the small parameter. Okay, nowadays, of course, there are nice works of Martin Weissmuller about the question related with fast slow dynamics without explicit small parameters. Okay, but in this case, it's explicit. But at the last part of the talk, I will speak about the cardiac dynamics where it's not any explicit small parameters. So we will work in that case without small parameters. So in this system is two fast variable, one slow variable, because in this case, obviously in the limit, the set will be a constant. So the typical thing, okay, so is go to the limit and to study what happened in the limit. So we have in that case the linear system, the critical manifold, and so on. So in this case, in the limit, we have the fast manifold, the fast subsystem. So in this case, the attractor in that fast subsystem will be in equilibria or limit cycle, and we can follow these manifolds. So the typical thing in this case is to construct this typical fast slow decomposition. So in this case, we have the manifold of the equilibria of the fast subsystem. Okay, so it will be this line. Also, we have the manifold constructed by the limit cycles of this fast subsystem. So in this case, we have this tubular structure. Well, so and in this case, the real orbit will be this one in blue. So using the theory of Fenichel, is the orbit follows more or less this question of this critical manifolds of this system. So we have the slow movement follow the slow manifold. When it reaches one bifurcation of this slow manifold, has to go to the fast manifold, so begin to the oscillations, and later to go down again when it finishes. In this case, because we have a homoclinic bifurcation of this limit cycle. So in this case, we enter in one classification of this kind of dynamics. This dynamics is called bursting dynamics. So this is a bursting orbit in blue. So in the classification of Ifkiewicz, in this case, this is a so-called Folholm bursting dynamics, because the end of the slow dynamics is due to a fold bifurcation, and the end of the fast dynamics is due to the homoclinic bifurcation of this limit cycle. So this is a Folholm bursting behavior. So we are studying mainly this, but not only this. So if we expand the bifurcation and study of this, we have here this fold.
Can I ask a question, Roberto?
Yes.
Really quick, because I'm really foreign to this topic. What's this Ifkiewicz classification?
Well, Ifkiewicz, the classification is related about relating to bifurcation. One is the bifurcation relating with why is ending the resting behavior, okay, the slow dynamics. And the another one is why is finishing the fast dynamics, the oscillation dynamics, okay? So in this case, the first is related with the end of the slow dynamics. In this case, is due to this fold bifurcation in the bifurcation of the equilibria. So in this case, this is a fold, okay, or sudden loss. Yes. Okay. So it's finishing, so it cannot continue in some sense this line. it has to go up, so begin to oscillate. And the oscillation is following this tubular shape manifold, okay? It's finished in the homoclinic bifurcation of the limit cycles of the fast system. So in that case, we reach the end because of the homoclinic. So of course, this is just in the limit, okay? The real orbit moves slightly from this limit case, of course. It's not exactly in the limit.
Yes.
Okay, so because this is not epsilon equal to 0. In this case, I think epsilon is 10 to minus 2, something like that. Okay, so but this follows from the Fenichal theory. Okay,
Yes.
so the classification was given by Izkiewicz and taking different kind of bifurcations relating. So there is Volhom, Volhoff, Hopf, and so on. There is a lot of related bifurcation classifying bursting dynamics. Okay, this is a very nice article. In fact, he has also a well-known book on dynamics related with neuroscience. Okay.
I see. Thank you.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
So this is real neurons. So in this case, we can see that this dynamic, well, this is in a spatial, okay, but you see the time series, this will be the time series. It's the same like this, the same like these cases, okay? So this dynamics is quite realistic, okay? So it has sense to study what really happens. Okay, so the spike cutting we see in 3D, the picture is something like this. So we have here in blue a bursting orbit with 5 spikes. 5 spikes is each oscillation in the fast submanifold. Okay, so begin to move to make it longer this movement in this plateau. This is called plateau, and at the end begin to appear an extra spike and later go back again, and we have the orbit with 6 spikes. So this is more or less spatially in the same position, but with 1 extra spike, but in the other begin to move a little bit. Okay, this is typical in this classical about the question of appearing of canards. Okay, canards is a typical orbit in fast slow dynamics. So when the orbit follows sometime, not only the attracting branch of the manifold, but also the repelling branch for some time. Okay, so in this case, this is special orbits. So this is the case. The orbit follow the stable branch of the equilibrium, go up because due to this fold bifurcation, go up, follow, but later continue some time the unstable branch of this equilibrium. So this orbit will be one example of this kind of dynamics. Normally it's in exponentially a small range of the parameters. So to locate it, you know what to look for. Okay. So, but it was studied in several articles. So what we want to know is to locate this in the global parametric panorama of this kind of system. So to that goal, we made some years ago some studies using bifurcation techniques and continuation techniques and other techniques. In this case, the colors. This is a biparametric plot. The parameters B and I. Okay, 2 parameters of the system. Okay, so and in this case, the color of each point means the number of oscillation of spikes of the limit cycle that appear in this for this parametric range. Okay, for these values of parameters. So that means the change of color means 1 extra spike or 1 spike less. For instance, here is with 1 spike, 2 spikes, 3 spikes, 4, 5, 6, and so on. When we have more than 30 is this color, that is, or the orbit has a lot of spikes, or is a chaotic orbit. Okay, so we studied this related about this classification. So the nice thing that this gives a global panorama, and we want to connect with bifurcation. So in this case, there are a lot of bifurcation. We have homoclinic bifurcation in black, bifurcation curve, and several bifurcation limit cycle. We have saddle node of fold bifurcation of limit cycle, saddle node. We have period doubling and so on. But a key point here is the appearance of codimension 2 homoclinic bifurcation points. So in this case, we have orbit flip and inclination flip. So these bifurcation are key points in this global analysis. the theory in this case, for instance, this is for the inclination flip. Orbit flip is quite similar in some sense. The unfolding in this case is something like this. So we have different types of inclination flip for orbit flip bifurcation, type A, B, and C. In our case, you are in the case C, okay? So in this case, we have pencils of period doublings and fold bifurcation that are generated on this codimension 2 point. And also we have a pencil of secondary homoclinic bifurcations. So this is one kind of, and another one is the homoclinic in the other side of the curve. That in fact is our case. So, but key point is that we have pencils of period doubling and fold bifurcations. Because this will generate, well, all this kind of bifurcation, period doubling, in fact, an infinite number of it, and generate this chaotic structure and so on. In fact, we studied what we call microscopic chaos because we have here this pencil generate a small region of chaos that you only can detect it if you really know the structure, because you cannot see. In the other case, you can see what we call macroscopic chaos when we have also this typical period doubling cascade and so on. So it's the typical thing, but the origin is these orbit flip points. Okay, but the interesting thing is that looking at this is just one curve, but this is not true. In fact, the structure is quite complex. So we have, it's not a curve, it's an isola. That means it's homeomorphic to a circle. So in this case, what we have a closed loop in this homoclinic. It has two sides, in fact, one with one number of n spikes, another one with n plus one. So there is some homoclinic spike adding process in this isola. But the question is this: not only one isola. Exponentially close, we have a big number, but a finite number of isolas, of homoclinic isolas. In this case, we have some separation, but this is almost on the other one, and we have more and more. And the orbit flip bifurcation and the pencils are connected from one to another and so on. This is a quite complex structure. But this gives the complete link between the bursting with n plus one spikes and bursting with n spikes. And in between, we have the basic ingredients to have also the canard phenomena creating these spikes. So the nice thing of mixing these techniques is that we are able to give a new bifurcation sketch of what will really happen. But this is something that happened when we have fixed this value of the small parameter. I mean, in this case, all the simulation that we have shown before is from epsilon equal to 10 to minus 2. So,
Roberto,
yes.
Can I ask?
Yes.
This isola is the whole picture of the black line that you had before.
Well, if we take this, yes, will be, we can think about that. Yes, is the two sides of the isola is collide in some sense. It's very close each other. In fact, you cannot see. Okay. In fact, you cannot see because the distance can be 10 to minus 10 or something like that. So in fact, in the parameter space, you cannot see with standard continuation techniques. Okay. But the continuation techniques follow the two sides. It can follow, but you cannot really see. But there is not only one curve. Very close to this, you will have so many as the number of spike adding processes. So
I see.
For instance, if in this case we have 20, I don't know exactly how many, okay, maybe 20 changes of spike adding processes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have several. Let's say 20. So we have 20 curves. Okay. So later we will see this structure. Okay. So is what we are going to see. Here we change the small parameter. 10 to minus 1 is this one. Okay. If we grow the small parameter, the structure is quite similar. We have the spike adding process and so on, but there are several things. We have less colors. That means less spike adding processes. We have less codimension 2 bifurcation point. We have here the inclination flip 2, but here we have no inclination flips. But we have Bediakov points also, okay? And here we have no Belyakov point. So what really happens with this codimension 2 points? We have a codimension 3 bifurcation point. Is one option. Okay, so the collision of two codimension 2 can be a codimension 3. Okay, so let's see what happens. So we want to know what happens when epsilon grows, but also we want to know what happens when epsilon decreases. Okay, so let's go. What happens when epsilon grows? So these are homoclinic surfaces. That means we have been able to obtain the homoclinic surface in this case, because we have made a lot of slides. So we reconstruct the surface. So for different changes from 1 to 2 spikes, 2 to 3 spikes, 6 to 7, 11 to 12. That means we have one for each spike coding in this case, okay? The biggest one is the 1 to 2, second the 2 and 3. We can see that the blue one, this is the limit, so it disappears. And also the another one from 11 to 12. And also the geometry is different. This has some hole here, and this is disconnected to parts. So the geometry is different. So we want to study that. For a small parameter, are all of them very close each other. When the small parameter grows, they begin to split. For instance, here you can see that they split. We can see clearly 3 of them. Okay, but here is impossible. So we have one pair spike coding, but due to the fast slow dynamics, here is almost all together. Okay, what is the geometry of this? So in this case, we have the generic scheme is this. We have different, someone with 2 disconnected regions, 2 disconnected isolas, another one is 1 isola. So in this case, it's 2 disconnected. For instance, it's 1. Later, we have 1, but with 1 hole here, in some sense, or 1 like a tubular structure like this. So we have these 3 kind of surfaces, of monoclinic surfaces. But all here, of course, all them very close each other. Okay, so we want to show what happens. So in fact, the structure is what we call a millefeuille, called spine of the books, because for us, we give this name about the homoclinic millefeuille. That means a lot of homoclinic surfaces very close each other. And the structure inside each one, if we make the cut, we have the isola. We have the orbit flips here with the pencil of bifurcations. So this open like this, so we give the name, this like the spines of a book, like the seats of the book that is open when it's open. Okay, so we have this very complex structure of all of this. So in the surface, begin to open. Okay, so the global organization is something like a homoclinic bookstore. So we have these homoclinic surfaces, and in each surface we have the codimension 2 points that opens these pencils of peridoublings and fold bifurcation that provide the complete structure of this. So to provide the complete homoclinic structure, in fact, this is an idea of what really happens of all. This is quite interesting because some of this homoclinic structure disappear. If the homoclinic structure disappear, this spike coding process disappear. So we have one color less, and so on. Okay, so this is give one reason why it disappeared. So we want now to classify this, because why not? So we enter in something that we recently call geometric bifurcation. In fact, it's not a topological bifurcation. In that case, it's just a way to explain why you observe the dynamics, it changes. But it's not a topological bifurcation. Okay, so in this case, we take Morse functions. Okay, so in this case, well, some way of speaking is that we take when we have a bifurcation surface, and when we have in the bifurcation surface one point when the horizontal plane is tangent to the surface. So in this case, is degenerate in this case because it's not transversal to the surface in this case. So when you visualize making cuts by this parameter, in this case the epsilon, In this case, what we call, if we consider the height function to be a locally immersed function. So in this case, this point will act like a bifurcation, but not a real topological bifurcation, but visually act like this. It's a geometric, what we call a geometric bifurcation. The situation are like this. So we have more surfaces, like a cylinder shape, is a two-hole sphere, or a pair of pans. So this surface we have seen before, or two disks. So these three surfaces, these three more surfaces we have seen in the homoclinic surfaces, in the Riemann-Roch neuron. So if this is a bifurcation surface, and we have codimension two curves inside it, so this is codimension 1 surfaces, so will be a codimension 2, for instance, Belyakov or orbit flip and so on. So you have a maxima. So if we move up, it disappears. This is not a bifurcation, topological bifurcation, but geometrically we see the collision of two. Okay. Of course, there are collision of two of these that is a codimension 3. For instance, in this case, if we have two bifurcations that collide, we may have a codimension 3. But in this case, it's not the situation. This is not geometric, but this one is geometric. Okay. Also, we may have this point. So this is the pair of pan shapes in topology. So we have this point, or we have the maxima of the surfaces. So we have also these points. We call this one isola type, we call this saddle type, and we have what we call visible or invisible. This is a visible fault. Okay, we can see it, no problem. But in this case, when we go to one side to the another side, okay, in this case, we call invisible because we see only one and disappear. So this is the visible and invisible has sense in fast slow dynamics when the distance in the sense at the two sides of the cylinder is too small. In a normal situation, not as fast as slow dynamics, the invisible is not present because you can see almost everything. Or you can link, you can make a combination of several more surfaces. So in this case, we call this duck foot shape. So because we link this shape with another one, this is not a Morse surface, it's a combination of several. Okay, but disappear, for instance, if in a Nabumo system and so on. But today I'm not going to speak. But let's come back. So in this case, homoclinic 1 to 2, we have, this is the Belyakov curve, so we have this maxima, or in this case, we have the inclination flip, so we have this kind of point. So, but this explains why we see that it disappears. It's not a codimension bifurcation from the topological point of view, but this is a geometric one, because it's what we really observe. Or in the homoclinic 2 and 3, we have this hole here, it's a pair of pants. So in this case, we have all these things. Or in this case, it's disconnected. So in this case, we have also this maxima of the surface and so on. So this is why we cannot see more this number of spikes, 12 or 11, when the small parameter is big enough. So the good thing is that this explains all these changes, because the disappearance of the inclination flip is something of this. We have a visible fall and so on. Or the disappearance of the Belyakov points. Again, this coincidence in this case is invisible falls and so on. So we can classify these things. This is interesting from the point of view of experimentalists, because they observe changes that are not bifurcation, but are related with something that they can observe. Okay,
may I
what
ask,
happened when? Yes,
Roberto, sorry. So does this mean that the spike adding problem is connected to the geometry of the Morse complex of
well,
these?
it's connected. The question is related with a small parameter. Okay, when the small parameter goes to 0, and I'm going to speak, the number of oscillation grows to infinity. But when epsilon go up, you have less oscillation. The question is why you have less. Well, the question that you have less is that the bifurcation involved in the creation of this spike adding phenomena are no more present. Why they are no more present? It's because these surfaces are beginning to disappear. It's no more. You have a mountain. If you are higher than the mountain, there is no mountain, of course.
Yes.
You have to go down. So this disappearance of bifurcation, no, it's not a bifurcation, because if you change the orientation, the maximum point is in a different point, not exactly in the same point. Okay, so it's something geometric, but it's okay, something that you really observe.
I see.
So
Thank you.
it's related with that. Okay, so what happens when epsilon goes to 0? Well, go back to this. So taking this parameter. So let's take the chaotic areas. Okay, this is Lyapunov exponent. So that means that this color, this orange color, is related with positive Lyapunov exponent, the first one. So it means that, well, it's an indication that we have chaotic dynamics here. Okay, so this is the first Lyapunov exponent. Okay, we want to classify this chaotic attractor. Okay, so if we make the picture of several of them, all of them are quite similar, maybe a little bit bigger and so on, but we want to classify it. The value of the Lyapunov exponent gives no idea. It's more or less quite similar. So the value of the Lyapunov exponent really not classify an attractor. So in this case, we take what is called topological templates. So in this case, what we have done is that, okay, typical analysis is you have a chaotic invariant set, not necessarily a chaotic attractor. It can be a chaotic saddle. Okay, so in the case you have this invariant. Okay, you go to the limit of the quizzing. Okay, that means because this is useful when you have some strongly contracting direction. Of course, you have the expanding one, but you have a highly contracting one. That means you can go in some sense to the limit of this. In this case, you can take a Ferretum map. In the case of this situation, it will be it's not a line, of course, but it's similar to a line because it has fractal dynamics. But in any case, it's quite similar. And you can study symbolic dynamics using, for instance, this Ferretum map, or using other techniques. And with this and constructing the unstable periodic orbits for the attractor, you can construct what is called the topological template. Okay. So in this case, the topological template is like a 2D branched manifold that has the same information as the 3D attractor, but this is a 2D template. So all the periodic orbits in the attractor are in the template and so on. Okay, so in our case, we have studied that we have the Smale template in the human rows. The Smale template is the simple one. So you say, okay, but this the simple. Yes, but there is several things. So the Smale template is this one. So you have one root that is normal, another one makes a torsion. Okay, so you have the two options. So you have a Moebius branch and another one that is orientable. Okay, so you have this, but the question is, we have different attractors. So all of them is the Smale template. The answer is yes and no. Okay, so for instance, you have this attractor. We made color using the Ferretum map, okay, of the attractor of the chaotic saddle. We can make the color on the loop. When a loop connects to go from the 0 situation in the Ferretum map to the 1. Okay, so one color. Another color from 1 to 1. Another color from 1 to 0. Another color from 0 to 0. So we have 4 different colors. For this value, we have only 3 colors. 0, 0 is not present. That means a change of symbolic code of 0, 0 is not possible in this case. So you will have 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, but 2 consecutive 0 is not possible in all the orbits related to this attractor. In this other case, moving the parameter, the red color, 0 to 0, appear. In this case, it's 2 spikes, and the chaotic dynamics close to it has not this 0, 0. When we have 3 spikes, in this case, and the chaotic attractor close to it, begin to open the 0 and 0. What happens if we move more? In this case, we have a lot of red color because now we have a lot of 0 to 0 symbolic names. That means we have long 0, 0, 0, 0 and later ones and so on. that is not possible in the other case. So this gives an idea. What we have are topological subtemplates. So that means we can study about the first return map on these cases, about the connection and so on. When begin to move the parameter in the line from the biggest parameter, that means from the right to the left, the simple chaotic attractor is on the right, the more complex is on the left. This is just moving on a small interval. The first return map begin to grow and begin to enter in the area, crossing this area where you are possible the 0-to-0 connection in the first return map. That means it's open the possibility of having periodic orbits with 0-0 symbolic code in the global.
Roberto, may
Yep.
I ask? Yes,
Yes.
and also anyone in the audience is free to ask anytime. This is like usually a very interactive seminar. So essentially, you are telling us which subshifts can be encoded in each attractor, kind of, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I see. And
yes.
Does this imply that some of them are more complicated than others? Because I think that even studying subshifts as an abstract object is already extremely complicated. So it's unclear to me if allowing more transformations within a type of subshift actually makes the dynamics more complicated in the first place. I think that there are some open problems, like it's unclear which shift spaces are isomorphic to which, and so on.
Yes, of course, there is a lot of theoretical things related, but in fact, we are going to explain a little bit how is organized the opening process. Okay, so because this is just to illustrate how it's moving the first return map. Okay, but the way can be studied. Okay, the question about the location and so on, the symbolic sequences. Okay, because it opened what we call the symbolic flip bifurcation. So is the change, because when you cross the maxima, okay, of the first return map, that is also super stable. Well, this is related with several things in discrete dynamics. But in this case, crossing, when a periodic point cross, okay, the notation of this point change from 1 to 0. Okay, so this change is what we call symbolic flip, because it changed from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. Okay, so this moving in the parameter, it happens. Okay, so this symbolic flip changed the last symbolic name, but later there are periodic doubling bifurcation that duplicates this, but another symbolic flip changed just the last one of 1 and so on. It begins to complete all the symbolic names that allow you to complete all the periodic orbits with 2 zeros or with 2 or 3 zeros and so on. Okay, so this is a link about this question.
So the template is fixed all along, right? If I understand.
Yeah. You have, this is the Smale template, okay, the complete Smale template, but there are forbidden and allowed routes.
Yes.
Okay, so inside the template it's like a motorway. Okay, some lines are closed, but suddenly open is one by one, okay, because the change of this symbolic flip permits to open an extra line.
Yes, so the family of transformations gets richer and richer, essentially.
Yeah,
I see.
Okay, so in fact this is something like this. Here we have 0 allowed, 0 forbidden in this chaotic attractor. Later in this area, this line is where is located the maxima of this first return map. When the curve grows, here you will have a symbolic flip. So we have an extra 0 begin to appear, and later with the period doubling and this cascade of period doubling, inside all of this begin to cross and to cross and to cross. Okay, begin to complete all these 0-0 change in order to complete all the periodic orbits with 2 zeros. And later with 3 zeros, with 4 zeros, with 5. That means the spike adding process, each one begin to complete one of these or one of these routes with 2 zeros, 3 zeros, and so on. So it is related with the spike adding nodes. So that means it's linked with this. Okay. So that means inside here we have a number of spikes, one more and one more. That means here it is connected with this orbit flip, with this pencil of bifurcation of peridoubling and fold bifurcation, but in between each one of these we have a symbolic flip in between. So in fact, what we really have the structure is something like this: period doubling, symbolic flip, period doubling, symbolic flip, blah blah blah. Saddle node, symbolic flip, and so on. That means this begins to create all this complex structure. It's also linked with orbit flip. Of course, symbolic flip is just is not again a topological bifurcation, okay? But it's a change in the symbolic dynamics of the system. So begin to complete all these things. That means we are beginning to complete all. But the question is that the number of spikes is finite. But in the limit, it's well studied that in the limit, the number of spikes grows to infinity. That means if we go to the limit of all this process, so we have this conjecture that the limit template will be the complete Smale template, because this spike adding process, this symbolic flip, and all this question. So in the limit, we will have the complete Smale template, but for a finite value of epsilon, we'll have a Smale subtemplate in the chaotic attract. Okay, so this will be the question related with epsilon goes to 0. Okay, let's continue. Let's go now to nature a little bit. Okay, I think that maybe I have to go a little bit fast. Insect gate transition. So in this case, we have the movement of the insect. So we want to connect to a spike array, yes, but in this case, to study it is not one isolated neuron. So in this case, we need at least in an insect 6 neurons. Okay, so we have what is called a CPG, a central pattern generator. It's a network of 6, in this case, 6 neurons. Okay, so we have the movement tetrapod gate is always 4 legs on the floor and 2 on the air. This is slow movement. Okay, but in this case is for example for the cockroach is this in case is a tripod gate, always 3 legs on the floor. Okay, so this is one real situation. So this has interest in robotics and so on, but also from the theoretical point of view. So in this case, this is the TPG. It's a network like this of 6 neurons connected in this way. Okay, so I'm not going to enter specific the way of connecting. This model is more complex. So the dimension is 4 for this one. So its dimension is 24, so it's bigger. So in order to study it numerically, we have a 24-dimensional cube. So in this case, we need to use some kind of machine learning techniques in order to classify. It's not a standard machine learning, but it's some kind of, okay? So we need to make automatic pattern detection and so on. We use some Fourier analysis to classify something, and later, well, the question is to make an automatic detection of what kind of movement we have. Okay, so we obtain something like this. This has a lot of information. What we have here in gray color is what we saw before in colors, is what we call the spike adding, is the number of spikes, a number of oscillation of one isolated neuron. So we have a network of 6, but this is just information of 1. Okay, but the key point is that the information of 1 is quite relevant for all the network. So the information in colors is the network moving in 2 lines, in this line of the parametric space or another one. Let's just think on this one. Okay, the first one, this one. This is 100 of the orbit we have simulated. For each value of parameters, we have made a lot of simulations, moving in this 24-dimensional cube. Okay, a lot of initial condition in a high-dimensional problem. So in this case, we have classified automatically all the limit cycles. Each limit cycle is one pattern of movement of this insect. Can be the tripod, the tetrapod, or something strange, okay? But something strange that appear in nature. So here we have later make also with automatic technique to identify moving the parameter one kind of pattern to a similar one in a different value of parameters. So we have detected that the tripod movement is dominant when in this area of the parameters. That means when you move the parameter, normally when you make something faster, go to this area. So the tripod gate is dominant in this area, and the mathematics give that. And we have several routes to change from other pattern to the tripod. Okay, good. For instance, here we have several patterns. The pattern 10 is this one. This means the legs that are on the air, okay? Only one, two at the same time, two at the same time, begin to move. And later here we have the 13, this one is beginning to overlap. Later the 15 is the tetrapod, always 4 on the floor, 2 on the air synchronized, 2 on the air, and so on, begin to move. Reaching later, 21, 23, is the tripod gate, 3 always on the floor, 3 on the air. Okay, so 3 always on the floor. But a good point is that the changes in things are related with the spike adding process in the one isolated neuron. That means in neurons, the process of spike adding is quite relevant to allow changes in the system. So we are studying this in other problems, but this is relevant in this case. So also we can study later bifurcation and so on, but well, in this case it's not relevant. But the spike adding process is connected what will really happen with the global net. Okay, so also we can study other topologies. In fact, we have played recently, what happened if we change the topology of the network, adding more nodes and so on, taking what we call is a bipartite CPG. That means we put color in the network about to put making that is a bipartite pattern or tripartite that is a p color pattern. That means it's a classification of the graph about it can be a 2-color or more and so on. Okay, so in the case we take a 2-color pattern, that means bipartite patterns. So graphs that allow a 2-color description of the graph. Okay, so in that case we have made the analysis at these cases. This case is a bipartite pattern, and this graph is bipartite, but can be of pattern with tripartite in this case, or other kind of patterns. That means the bipartite graph can have the dominant one, the bipartite pattern, but also other patterns. So we want to study which topologies of the CPG, of the network, allow the creation of extra patterns different from the dominant bipartite to the construction of the graph. So this can generate, for instance, most of them is dominant, but we have classified the few graphs that give this. So we want to connect this also with the spike adding, but by the moment it's just a question about the topology of the graph that is in some sense quite interesting, because some of them appear in nature. So it will be something that is open for us now. Well, and to finish, I want to speak about hair dynamics. So in this case, where appear the spike adding? This is the normal signal of the heart, but in fact, it's a cardiomyocyte. That means the muscle cells of the heart. Okay, so this is the typical, the normal, the health rhythm. This one in black, but sometimes begin to appear secondary oscillation. These are extra spike. So these are spike adding processes. Okay, in the heart. But the question is, why happens? Because this is quite dangerous, because can be the cause of the appearance of fatal ventricular arrhythmia. So this is quite dangerous. So the question is why it begins to appear. Well, so in this case, these are experimental recordings seen from cells, normal voltage, and voltage with one extra. It's in 2 different animals. So that means this is something that really appears in laboratory. And this is from numerical models, and a simple model of 3D, or a 27 7-dimensional problem, much more realistic. Okay, but the situation is quite similar. Of course, it's very important to take the high-dimensional model because are the realistic ones. But to go inside, we need to go to the 3-dimensional one because it's not possible to do a lot of things in the high-dimensional one. Okay, typical thing that the last few years has been done is a question about the fast-slow decomposition. Typically, it has done one slow too fast, like in the Hillman-Rose case. But recently, several groups we have extended to 2 slow to 1 fast. I have no time to explain this. So in this case, we have the critical manifold is much more complex because in this case it's surface, not a curve. So in this case, the study is more complex. But the real thing is that, in fact, it's not 1 slow too fast or 2 slow 1 fast. It's a mixture because it has 3 time scales in the 3-dimensional model. But what happens in the 27-dimensional model is nothing, no one of these. But this provided quite interesting information. So I explain a little bit. Okay, so for instance, if we take a 27-dimensional, or recently we have done something in the 41-dimensional. In this case, it's a human ventricular model, so it's a more complex one. So in this case, a very, very complex differential system. No possible to make analytics. So making numerics, okay, in the system is 2 parameters, okay. The change of colors is answer related. It's answer related to number of spikes. It's not really. It's well, yes, it's related with a number. In this case, it's normal bit is just 1, and here is 2. That means here we have always 1 extra spike. That means we have this dangerous extra oscillation here, and in between, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Okay, so the question is to study, the most important thing is to study the first change because begin to be ill this dynamics. So in this case, we have studied things related about B stabilities and so on. But this is numeric. It's not possible to make a continuation here or at that time because now we have done things. Okay, so at that time we have B stability. This B stability has several dynamics. So the conjecture that we give is something related about we have the normal bit here is just 1 spike, and here 2 spikes in red. That means we just make some Poincare section in some sense. So we make just 1 cut or 2 cuts, okay? So 2 spikes, 1 spike. These 2 branches has coexistence in some time, but also we have, of course, 1 connection. We cannot see the connection because it's unstable. We have this hysteresis phenomena, but the creation of this is related with what is called in carrier dynamics the creation of alternance, but in dynamics is about the appearance of some bifurcation that makes more oscillation in the related with the question of period doubling or torus bifurcation. That means begin to have more oscillation not relating with the spike cutting that is just a small oscillation in the fast submanifold. So we need to create this, for instance, a period doubling or torus bifurcation as in the case of the 27. And later these crosses begin to move in this critical manifold. So here the fastest slow theory is quite interesting about the crossing of some special points and so on, but today I have no time to explain this in detail. But permits to explain this. So dynamics give an explanation of why these extra spikes begin to appear and the beginning to the generation of these cardiac arrhythmias. But this is for a conjecture from the numerics on the 27. If we go to numerics and continuation techniques and some analytics in the 3-dimensional, we are able to compute the unstable branch. We are able to detect where begin to appear this extra EAD, this extra spike, and so on. That means with the low-dimensional one, we really observe all these phenomena related with the 27. Okay? But again, this is the 3-dimensional. So, in fact, we are happy because we have quite recently obtained for the 41-dimensional model of O'Hare human model, we have really been able to make continuation by using a new fast slow decomposition strategy. So in this case, we have no explicit small parameters. So we need to locate the slowest variable in the case that no stimuli are here. But the main question is that it is a new fast-slow decomposition strategy for this 41-dimensional problem, but permits to study. We have studied different coexistence periodic orbits with different number of spikes in some area. We have located with the fast-slow decomposition the relevant bifurcations of the normal bit about the creation of this area of extra spikes. And this fast-slow decomposition permits to locate the area when we have what we call repolarization failure is quite related with this fibrillation. That means a small oscillation without going down. So this is a very dangerous region, but delimits quite well the fast-slow decomposition, these things. That means fast-slow decomposition are relevant in several problems, are very well connected with the spike adding process. So all of this provide a nice information. For instance, here, this is the repolarization failure, the area of this fibrillation. This is a normal bit. And here is where we have the extra spike. This is related with the fast-slow. This is fast manifold, the slow manifold is here, and so on. But the traditional techniques don't work here. This allows us to create new techniques to control this fibrillation, because we know that is stratified with respect to this detected slow manifold and slow variable, and just moving slightly this variable permits to control this fibrillation. So we are contacting with some people, experimentalists, trying to focus on this dynamical technique in order to control this kind of things. So just to finish, okay, so just to say that the combined use of a lot of numerical techniques combined with theoretical techniques provides a better idea of the global system dynamics. This permits us to explore complex behavior. Well, it's quite important also the question of fast-slow systems and the detection. So it provides creation of global conjectures, of course not theorem, because all of these are open things, but okay, it's provide conjectures about the homoclinic millefeuille structure, spines of a book structure, geometric bifurcation, the topological templates, or to explain what happens in complex systems, spike adding bands, the case of movement, of EADs in hard dynamics, and so on. So that's all, and okay, thank you for your attention.
Yes. So let us thank our speaker. Thank you very much, Roberto. That was a really detailed talk on an impressive body of work, to be honest. So now, if it's all right with you, maybe we can go over some questions from the audience.
Yes, of course.
So if anyone wants to ask a question, just open your mic. Otherwise, okay, then I will ask. Since we went into applications at the very end, and you were talking about locomotion, right? Like animal locomotion, and then we went into the heart. I was always thinking about heart disease prevention and how sometimes heart conditions are difficult to diagnose because you need to induce a crisis somehow, right? But on the other hand, genes are probably correlated to the appearance of some of the parameters in your equations, right? So my question was if anyone is doing something in the direction of identification of genetic components that could maybe imply or facilitate this spike adding process and trigger a crisis at some point. So could this somehow be used to guess a genetic test, so to say?
Wow. Well, you are linking different things. The question about genetics, of course, in this case, the genetics induce probably, there are two problems. It is in fact the now several lines of dynamical system and medicine is focusing in digital twins. You are thinking in some sense about that. That means you may have one model of cardiomyocyte, but that model is a generic one. So you need to particularize it to that particular genetic structure. That means the question is if some genetics induce some kind of parameters in the model that finally you have.
Indeed.
So the question, this is very interesting, okay? But the first thing is to have a deep database of these digital twins, and later another database of the genetics of that people. So to make a connection of that. So these two things. This is very interesting, of course. But you need some data that is not easy to have.
I know. So that's why I was always thinking of one example of locomotion, animal locomotion that immediately comes to mind is zebrafish, right? So in zebrafish, the link between genetics and the motion of the animals, like, well, different traits in different genetic lines of the animals is quite well studied, I think. So there are many groups of biologists who have taken the time to sort of spot the effects of changes in the DNA of the animals over, well, what they identify as different gaits, except that now these are fish. So it's not legs moving at the same time, but rather different traits. So I was wondering if maybe something has been done about zebrafish.
Well, to tell you the truth, I really don't know what have done this connection. It's quite interesting, but the problem is that involves a lot of previous steps, because the first step is, okay, to have very well studied the movement. Okay, good thing. Taking into account a general model for the movement of this animal. Second thing is to detect which changes in the genetics make a change in the model, in some parameters of the model that you have. So in that case, you can make the link, but you need to have a lot of information, and a lot of information from experimentalists, because the question about the genetic information and so on has to be provided by people in experiments, and this is quite expensive. It's, of course, very interesting, but the question is that, well, I think that nobody has done this, because you need to have
it's a lot. It's
a lot of information. It needs really a lot of work, of course, and complicated work, because it begins to be possible, because with machine learning techniques, you can do some of the processes. You can use data simulation to have the coefficients of the model and so on, blah, blah, blah. But in any case, well, that could be something interesting, but it will be something of several teams together. It's impossible for only one team.
Yes, definitely. I was just wondering about, because one of my dreams kind of is to actually find applications of mathematics to real life someday, right? So if can mathematics really give you something new that you couldn't find otherwise, right?
The answer is yes, of course. But the question is slowly.
Yes,
definitely.
definitely.
But yes, the answer is yes, no doubt. Because now it's beginning to enter in some areas. Mathematics are more already introduced. In mathematical neuroscience, mathematics, the people know, some people, a lot of mathematics in these disciplines. Other disciplines, not so much. But in several areas, yes, and beginning to be more and more involved in this question, but
I see.
Slowly.
Definitely. Yes. Are there any further questions? Okay. I also found your the first part of your talk, very interesting regarding spike adding and this whole geometric structure somehow motivating the results. But I think that I really need more time to go through it carefully and properly follow. But one thing that I was thinking about all of the time were these regions of chaos that you say appear via period doubling bifurcations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does this imply that nearby you should have a spike doubling, so to say? Like if these families of periodic orbits are somehow connected to a homoclinic orbit, does this mean that the homoclinic orbit develops a secondary spike at some point?
Well, there are several things, because here we have studied mainly the question of fall home. That means one particular kind of situation. It's the most common, but in any case is one of the possible situations. In the global panorama, there are others, and we have studied, but here I have focused only on that. In this case, the existence of homoclinics gives you the codimension 2, and the codimension 2 bifurcation gives you the pencils of period doubling and fall bifurcations. In other situations, you don't have this. You have spike adding, but in a different kind of process. Okay, so we have some classification about the spike adding, and there are other more complex situations. As you have these pencils, you have the period doubling and so on. So that have obviously double the number, instantaneously double the number of spikes, of course. Mm-hmm. Because spike adding is just one by one, so it's different process.
Yes.
So it's a different thing. So that depends. So in this case, is because this situation is one of the most common, but in this case, the key point is homoclinic. Okay, yes. So that's so depending on what kind of spike adding that you have hysteresis and so on, you can suspect that close by you have some homoclinic dynamics. You can suspect. But of course, depending on the different cut you make in the parameter space, you cannot see it. Okay, so that depends, of course. You have some structure, you can make a cut that make no transversal cut to it, so in that case you cannot see. But nearby, you need to have it, yes.
Yes, it's very interesting. Very, very interesting. Good. So are there any further questions? Okay. If that's not the case, maybe we can close the session here. And if anybody wants to hang around and have a more informal discussion, I will stick around for a few minutes, but otherwise I'd say we close the seminar here. So let us thank our speaker again.